Fuel prices going up dramatically this week. They'll continue to go up over the next few months, are some of the predictions. There are also some indications that government may be preparing to impose what could be called a traffic management levy. We don't know for sure. What we do know at the moment is that the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, and the Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe, have been discussing ways to change the petrol pricing formula. A big part of that is the fuel levy. There's been temporary relief to make fuel slightly cheaper. Gavin is the CEO of the Road Freight Association. Gavin, good afternoon to you. We know government is looking at changing the fuel price formula. What do we know about this proposed traffic management levy?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to all your viewers. Yeah, of course, we knew this was going to happen, didn't we? We knew that if they were going to cut or reduce or even take away the fuel levy, and that's the little tax portion or the large tax portion, whichever way you want to look at it, that is applied to the price of fuel at the pump, that we were going to have to find another way to cover that. It was going to be put onto something else. And this seems to be the go-to, that they're now talking about this traffic management levy, or transport management levy, or whatever you want to call it, that is now going to be applied through systems to recoup that levy that was used or collected through the fuel price. We haven't found any solid proposals yet as to a figure or as to how this is going to be collected and who would be affected, but it seems that you would have to follow a very similar process to fuel. So you're going to have to broaden that base as far as you can to ensure that the amount that you're going to charge, or however you're going to charge it, is going to be at a low rate that everybody can afford.
But if what you say is true, it still needs to come to around, 70 billion rand, I think, that the fuel levy actually gets for government. I mean, I can't imagine the imposition of any kind of new levy that would get through the public consultation phase, and it would probably have to get through the public consultation phase. I mean, 70 billion rand's a ton of money.
It is, and that is obviously the greatest concern, because as we all know, the huge price of fuel, the huge reason, or the main reason why fuel is so expensive is the rand-dollar exchange rate and the price, the oil price of fuel in the world. So the tax that they take on that, the 33% worth of tax, you take that away from fuel to make fuel cheaper so that we can transport goods cheaper and that we can get to work and we can transport people cheaper. You're going to have to find that somewhere. And if that's 70 billion rand, how are you going to do that? The only way, and I think what they are thinking of, is what is seen in other countries where they charge you for using your vehicle a mileage or a kilometer-based distance travel across all the roads that you travel. So in South Africa, there are a fair amount of roads that you're not tolled on. You're only tolled on so-called toll roads that we see around the country, the N1s and the N3s, etc., etc. And then, of course, there's the e-tolls. But the rest of the roads are theoretically covered through the fuel levy. They're covered through licensing. They're covered through various other taxes at local and provincial levels. So now the plan would be to look after these cost centers, and they're talking about road safety, they're talking about road maintenance, they're talking about traffic management, by having this traffic management levy.
In the end, the consequence would be the same. What government is doing through a fuel levy is that it is taxing movement. We use fuel to move goods and people. If you then have a traffic management levy, or whatever you want to call it, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're taxing people's movement, the movement of goods. In another way of looking at it, you're taxing the economy. The way I say that, the reason I say that is that Kevin Lings from Stanlib, I'm sure you know him, Gavin, made the point this week that the fuel levy had perhaps become an easier substitute for VAT for government. It's the same thing.
Well, there are two differences in terms of VAT, and I don't pretend to be an economist, but one of the things that's easy about the fuel levy is that you know exactly how many liters, how many billion liters of fuel are sold in the country. It comes from 3 or 4 main distribution points, so the oil majors, and it's very easy to say, well, that was 10 billion liters of fuel, and we will put a 10 cents or a 20 cents onto each liter. Very easy to collect. I say to collect in inverted commas. Where VAT is based on a fair amount of self-regulation, of reporting, of registering, and making sure that you actually give the real figures through. So yes, probably could be, in one way, an easier way of collecting money at a larger scale than that. Whether it would be a replacement, I don't know. The truth is this, Stephen, is that it might be called a fuel levy today. Tomorrow it's called a traffic management levy. It's the same thing. It's still going to be a tax collected, and it's still going to be collected in a system that would have an impact on the general economy. Correct.
Gavin, I mean, what's going to happen to your industry? You've got high fuel prices. The cost of shipping things around is going to go up dramatically. Demand to have things shipped around may fall as a result. Are some companies in your business going to go out of business?
Definitely. We've already seen that happening, that companies just can no longer take these financial knocks. And of course, there are a lot of companies who buy their fuel on a credit basis. So they would then put down a guarantee with some of the large fuel majors. Let's say they put down 100,000 Rand to run fuel, and they would buy against that credit. Some of them actually go into credit, so that they might be able to use a facility very much like a credit card that goes into negative. And you would then top that up as you fly out your business. But what has happened, and what many businesses face, is that they don't get paid immediately that day that they finish the work. There could be 30, 60, 90-day agreements in terms of paying invoices, but their business still needs to carry on. So they would have spent that fuel money. They would have put the inputs in terms of the costs of their business, of operating their business, but they haven't been paid. And that's really where the greatest challenge is. It's around that cash flow. It's being able to keep that business running. And there are going to be those who are just not going to be able to continue. And of course, it's cutthroat. The margins are very, very, very thin. And there are those who are just not going to be able to compete anymore.
Gavin, thank you very much indeed. Well, you can see the situation, how difficult it's going to be for the trucking industry.